Today's conversation is with Elle Daniel. Elle is a yoga teacher at Mission, and in the past few years, her life has changed in ways that are really hard to describe. She had a baby in 2023. 3 months after Ruby was born, she was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition called PMM2-CDG. This disease affects multiple organs in the body. So much so that about 6 months ago, Elle gave part of her own liver in an attempt to save Ruby's life. Sadly, tragically, Ruby died on January 27th of this year. This isn't a conversation about overcoming grief, because really that's something that you have to learn to live with. It's about learning to live with something that really becomes part of your reality. So we're going to talk about grief as not something to fix, but something really that you just have to carry. And about practice, about what that's like when life changes, about teaching when you have to hold space at the same time as holding space for yourself. There's no neat ending here, but I am glad to have this conversation with Elle. Elle, welcome to the Mission position.
Thanks for having me.
First off, how are you doing? I mean, basic, simple question.
Today I am okay. I'm pretty, I get tired more easily, but I'm finding being busy helpful. It's and not just like mindless busyness, as in I'm a lot more, I think since I had Ruby, I was always a little bit more picky about how I spent my energy, because it is, even, as any parent will know, it's so reduced or compromised. So I'm finding ways to be alongside this huge grief that I'm carrying, and I'm just finding ways to, I try to really lean into a lot of gratitude, but equally, I don't deny my sadness, my anger, all of that stuff. I'm finding that I am surrounded by an incredible community, friends, family, my Mission family as well. And I'm just living with it. I'm not really sure how, but I am. So, yeah.
Can you talk to us about Ruby, the day she was born, the day you found out that she had this rare disease, and what life was like for you after that?
So Ruby was my first. She was born at, I think it was 42 weeks. So, it was a long pregnancy. And, it was the best day of my life. I mean, doing a 24 hours of labor that ends in an emergency C-section is not fun. But, it's just the most incredible feeling having my baby there. And it was like a blur. And we got her home. She was, we were all discharged the next day. There was nothing sort of concerning. But then not long after we were home, I noticed she perhaps wasn't feeding in the way that, again, I didn't have anything to compare it to, but I was feeling and I was seeking a lot of support from a lactation specialist, just generally the community midwives were kind of checking in and seeing and how her growth was going. And it was becoming obvious that something wasn't quite right. And so there were, it was just, that was, in some ways, that was the toughest time before we had a diagnosis, because a lot of it fell on you can't not feel like you're failing as a mother, especially when the most basic need of your child isn't being met, like nourishment and growth. Yeah. And so that was a really, really tough time for all of us. And then when she was about 3 months old, she had such a combination of symptoms that she ended up in Great Ormond Street Hospital, where they are kind of more used to these rare conditions. And so immediately they started testing. They tested for a lot. I remember, because she had so many bloods taken, they had to regularly give her blood transfusions, which is just, all of this is so crazy. She was so tiny, and that was at the time when you're still in your postpartum as a mother. I had barely sort of recovered from the birth, so it was a weird and really scary time. But yeah, when we got the diagnosis, it was really heartbreaking, because I won't lie, it's a very bleak diagnosis. And I think, especially with these rare conditions, there's so little data, like, that encapsulates all the variable ways it can affect people. So you know, they tell you don't Google, but
Right.
obviously you do. And we get the grimmest stuff.
So did they know, right? Were they able to pinpoint what it was?
It was
right away?
yeah, it was well, there were
I remember there being a time where you weren't sure.
yeah, we didn't know. There were lots of teams coming to see her, and I think they call it a diagnostic odyssey, and it can take. I mean, I think she was, from the start to the finish, she was diagnosed within about 2.5 weeks, which is very short. Like, some families, it'll go for years and years and years. And yeah, so in January of 2024, we got her diagnosis, and it was really hard. And, you know, we didn't, no one could tell us what it meant, because it can present so differently for each person. And as I said, it's rare. There just there's not enough data to give accurate timelines and predictions based on that. So we were basically in and out of hospital with her a lot. And I mean, what was helpful was we connected with the charity. They're called CDG UK. I found other parents kind of all over the world, really, and that helped. But yeah, her life, you know, it was not easy. You know, she really had a very, I would say, like, quite a severe presentation of it. And then, yeah, we pretty much spent most of her life living in the hospital with her. And in some really strange ways, they were the best years of my life, because she was, and kind of still is, I guess, but she was really magic to be around. And she was just, until she wasn't, she was the happiest child. She went through a lot. Like, her little body went through probably like 200 years worth of things. And she seemed able to, I think in general, they said that kids, they have an ability to shake things off in the way that adults can't. Not because, I mean, yes, their bodies are perhaps quicker at healing, but also they just don't make up a story about what's going on in the way that maybe we do. So she was always kind of bouncing back, and everyone was really blown away by it. And that was equal parts nice to see, but it always like hurt my mum heart, because I was like, you are going through so much. And I remember I used to say to her quite often, I was like, you know, you don't have to be strong. And it was really important to say that to her, because I think in the end, because she was very, very, very unwell for the last 2 months of her life. And I think it was important to give her that permission to, let go. Yeah.
How was, talk to me about the liver transplant. I know she was healthy for a while afterwards, but, you know, let's talk about the procedure, about your decision-making process. And I suppose as a mother, you do whatever you can for the life of your child. There was maybe no question, but talk to us about how that was for you.
So we, in her condition, liver, maybe not full-blown liver disease, but liver issues are common. They tend to right themselves, and the liver is like a very resilient organ, and it regenerates. However, if it's become so poorly that it started to scar, it can't recover. And that's what had happened to her, is it had just become really, really damaged by the metabolic insufficiency that she had. So basically she had to go to King's for that one, because that's what they deal with. King's are like one of the big liver centres in the UK, adults and children. And they kind of were assessing her. They there was a really lovely kind of specialist nurse there who ran me through everything, and he explained different avenues that you can go down. Like, the most common is being on the list. So you go on a list, and then as someone dies there, and if their liver is healthy, that you get called up quite quickly and off you go. I think Ruby was so unstable in her health that would have been tricky anyway. But also, I kind of just felt quite strongly, instinctively, that I wanted to be her donor if I could. And I'd also been told about what they called living related donor. And so as soon as we got the call to say that the team there had recommended she have a transplant, they thought, because they'll weigh it up. Like, it's obviously
The risks.
exactly,
Yeah.
and it's like such a major intervention that obviously if there's any risk, they're going to say no. But they said yes. So like, I think that day I called the adult donor coordinator and I was like, sign me up. And yeah, I met with her. I started tests. They ask you loads of questions. It's a lot of blood scans. And yeah, I sort of passed their tests, which was good. And then we had to just wait for a date, and we actually missed our first date because she actually wasn't well enough.
I remember. Yeah, you had to postpone it.
Which was, I guess, frustrating, but knowing what I know about how fragile she is, I think it was the right thing, because it's such a major thing to your body, obviously.
Yeah. And yours. I mean,
and mine.
Tell us how that was for you. That's major surgery.
It is major surgery. It was my first general anesthetic, so all I remember is like sitting there on the bed, and like everyone's weirdly really excited because I guess that's their job and they love it. So it's all like the anaesthetists and surgeons, and they're all like, and I thought I was going to do a countdown, right, until I go like asleep, but they were literally asking me about my job teaching yoga, and so I was mid telling them, and then I just went, and then the next thing I know, and it's, I had been doing, because I'm really interested in consciousness, and like someone had sent me this article that said even anaesthetists don't know exactly where you go when you're under anaesthetic, and I was like, ooh. I obviously had thought about that, but literally it was like lights out and then back on at the end, and I have no idea what happened other than everything hurt, and I was very out of it. But I think what was really important is the coordinator and the nurse who were kind of handling our family were coming really regularly to tell me updates from her surgery and how it was going. So
how long were you then in surgery and then how long was she in?
I think mine was maybe between 3.5 to 4 hours.
Okay.
And then hers was longer, so probably more like getting on for 7 or 8. Maybe it's more complex adding in then, because they obviously have to remove hers, and then and there's like all the kind of fusing that has to happen, and
So let's talk about grief.
Yeah.
What is processing grief to you?
Well, in my experience, there is no resolution. Like, it's not like when you go through I don't know. I mean, I suppose there are breakups that can, there are levels of grief. Like, I think I've grieved things that I have gotten over in the past, but it's not really like that with a family member, certainly not with a child, because, there's something just very fundamentally wrong about outliving your child, and I think there's no solving it, and so the way I feel is, so me and Steve, my husband Steve, were able to take some time away, which was really important, because up until her passing she was in hospital, so we would literally take it in turns to stay the night. Only one parent can stay, so we didn't really get to check in that much. So we had a good 2 weeks away, and we just spoke about her. We cried, all of that. We were in a very like calm and like protected setting, and that was important. I read a lot, I wrote a lot, and then I sort of gradually made my way back to teaching. And I mean, I think you have to be so gentle with yourself. And I'm someone who runs the risk of overdoing things, kind of maybe busying myself. That would be my tendency. Like, I'm less likely to sit on the sofa and not get up. But equally, when I do have a day when I do less, you can go into quite a bad place, which isn't helpful either. I don't think so. It's finding that balance where you're not ignoring your grief and you're really acknowledging all the parts of it. So as I said, obviously there's sadness, but there's anger in it as well. I'm finding, just writing things down first thing in the morning, like a morning pages type thing, is really helping me. And just really letting, it's shown me just how supportive my network of friends is and my family is, and you as well, and the mission family. really leaning into that. And so there's a lot of contradictions. And also I think it's important to say that Ruby's life, especially towards the end, was very hard, and she was frequently suffering. She wasn't just in pain, she was suffering with it. And it's that, I said, if losing your child is the worst thing as a parent, seeing them suffer and not being able to help them is a close second. And that was pretty chronic at the end. And it was awful. And so I think it's very complex to say this, because if I say there's a relief, it might sound like I'm saying I'm relieved she's gone, which is not.
No, nobody would say.
No.
I think everybody can understand. You're being honest about it as well.
Yeah, and I think, the medical hospital life is very to that level is very, very grueling, on everyone, but most of all her. And I think what helps me a lot is to try, without bypassing the sadness and the complex stuff, to really try my best to focus on gratitude for all that she enjoyed in her life, all that she brought into our lives. Because you were at the funeral, there were maybe nearly 200 people there.
Yeah.
She really had an impact on so many people, even in her 2 and a bit years. So I try and really reflect on that. She's shown me the absolute life-changing, what's the word, majesty of the NHS. She showed me a lot of good people. She brought a lot of good people into our lives, and people who've stayed in our lives, who will always check in and who really miss her and miss us. So there's a lot of gratitude. It's just a day-by-day process. Sure. Yeah.
I've had people say to me, what can we do to help Elle? And I think, not meaning to point out the differences between Americans and British, but I found that sometimes the British don't know what to do, right? Whereas the Americans will be they'll just it's almost too much. They're bringing food over and everything. But the British, when they're faced with someone who has had a loss as immeasurable as yours, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. So not that it's on you to teach people, right? They should know. But how can people help you?
I honestly I'm very lucky. In the days after we left the hospital, everyone was coming over. Some of the mission teachers, like Mona, Mouse, people like that, who all live near me anyway, coming around with food. And one of my best friends cleaned our toilet and stuff, and then they hung out our laundry, things like that. It's almost a little, it's not a million miles away from when a baby's been born, and you don't need people to come around and cuddle the baby or give you flowers that you don't have anywhere to put. I mean, my front room was like a florist, and I quite enjoyed my amateur floristry skills. But I think just being there and just listening. And I think also because I'm very open about it, I talk and I've always shared the experience very openly with people of having a child, first of all, having a child with a rare disease and complex disabilities. So I feel like I have heard some friends say that because of that, they haven't been afraid to talk about things. There's not much, and I try to give people grace if they do say, no one's going to say the perfect thing. But I think, what you can do is just, and everyone's different, but I think just keep her, I think keeping the child in your memory and keeping her name alive, and
not being afraid to talk about
her. No, I love
because you
talking
sent
about
me
her.
a message on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And I was like, and to be honest, I was in the U.S., so I forgot it was Mother's Day. But I was like, oh my God, what I need to say to her, Happy Mother's Day, because you will always be a mother. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that was a bit of an identity crisis that, and I was really in the throes of it. I was like, I've lost this big part of me, but I haven't, and I don't even feel like I have. It's not even a thing. That there are so many things that I was afraid of. I was afraid of Mother's Day, and actually we made it a really special. Yeah, of course it was sad. We went to her grave, we went and did the flowers and everything, but my family really held me extra close that day, and I have to be grateful for that. I think it's just talking for me personally, it's just talking about her. And I, as I say, because I've always been very open about Ruby and I share her with everyone. I think people do that, and I really, that's what helps the most, is just keeping their memory alive, I think. Yeah.
Do you think you'll have another baby?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'd have 10 if I could. Like, maybe not 10, but like, yeah, kids are the best. You have to. It's really tricky because it crossed my mind, like, how it would be to have another baby with her still here. That's not an easy. People that there are, it was always good to see, like, when we would go to any of the conventions and things, there are families with a child with complex needs and they have siblings, and it's nice for kids to have siblings regardless of what their needs are or how difficult they find things, and it can help them a lot. So, but it was always something we wanted to think about carefully, because it's
the
a huge
impact on both children. And you.
Yeah, and me. And, Ruby may not be here anymore, but she is very alive in my, she's very vivid. Yeah. So there's always going to be that feeling. But yes, I hope we have more, and, we'll always be like, this is your big sister.
I love that.
And, yeah. I mean, I hope so, if we are so blessed.
So let's talk about movement. Have you gone back to the mat? Has that helped you in managing your grief?
Yeah. In terms of my yoga practice, I always kept up. I had to do it in very little and quite like private ways, because a lot of the time I was at the hospital, like I'd sometimes what would happen is she would wake up around like 8 a.m.-ish, and I would sometimes get up at like 5 and do my own little medical Mysore session. No, not really, but like it'd be really funny because I'd be there, like I'd have my mat and I'd just be doing like just some salutations. The nurses would be coming in and out, but they loved it and they were so used to it. But things like that, I'll be honest with you, meditating was near on impossible in hospital, just because people are coming in and out, and she's their patient, not you, so they're not going to just leave you for a quiet moment. So that was difficult. It's easier now, but I just have to do it in very short, sharp bursts, because if I go too deep and things get too, if I get too in my own head, I get the sense it's not helpful.
Yeah, because we were talking about that outside. Yeah. That is it better to go to a lead class or a Mysore class where it's silent and you're faced with those thoughts head on?
It's difficult. I got quite good at doing almost like the most recent training I did was actually yoga for kids with additional needs, led by someone called Jyoti Manuel. I don't know if you.
I know her.
And actually what a lot of it is regulating how to regulate your own nervous system, because obviously caring for a child with complex needs is very triggering. So, whether you're looking after a kid who has physical disabilities or they're kind of, they might be on the autism spectrum, challenging behavior, that kind of thing. She gave us a lot of really like good little 15-minute, maybe even 10-minute practices that were not so much like how I teach yoga, for example. It wasn't like a vinyasa, but it was just some kind of, nervous system regulation stuff. But it really, really had an impact. And I would then do it with Ruby. Yes. I would do kind of what I learned with her. And then now I think lead classes online, even though I much prefer being in person, probably feel a bit safer for me, because it is such a vulnerable spot for me, my yoga my asana practice, whereas you'll see me a lot in the Cali room at Mission. Not to say that I don't find it vulnerable doing pull-ups, but it's vulnerable in a different way. I think I can, because that was a thing I took on later down the line, and I associate it differently, and there can be introspective elements to Cali, sure, but it's a different pursuit, right? So I find it easier to I don't want to say switch off,
but so are we saying that on some days practice does not help?
Yeah, can be. But I also I think it's also worth saying that, like, I've in many ways over the last 2 and a bit years, my yoga practice has deepened a lot in ways that you wouldn't
Because of Ruby.
Yeah, like that I wouldn't teach in a class. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, because I love philosophy, like I always have. I'm very passionate about it. But you know, I'd read a lot of philosophy. I'd regurgitate it, and it's amazing, and it feels really good to talk about, and it's nice to kind of have moments of it click. But I do believe that until you go through something really challenging, it's quite hard to really embody a lot of that stuff or really understand it on like a deep kind of cellular level. So, you know, if yoga is like in the really deep sense, if it's union with the divine or kind of coming back to wholeness, that can be in that really like abstract sense, or it could even be just getting to shavasana. And you know, but you know, when I spent in Ruby's last days, I spent time with the palliative care team in the hospital, and there were lots of conversations had, and luckily the main doctor, the main consultant, had a really strong fascination with like the spiritual side of it, as I think you should. And I kind of feel like I almost learnt more about that yoga, what it is to really let go, and what it is to really come back to a feel like a sense of wholeness. And I'm saying this, I guess, a little bit on her behalf, because it wasn't me who was doing. I mean, I was letting go because I had to let her go, but it was that kind of brought a lot of the yogic teachings home for me in a way that, you know, when I'm doing a vinyasa class, it might not land in the same way. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's just a lot of yoga off the mat. But with that said, I love going to Mona. She's my sister as well. Teacher. Yeah, she's my teacher.
So what about you as a teacher? Because you've recently come back, and you know, it always was notable to me that, you know, even in the throes of it, you always wanted to teach. And I think a lot of people, you know, it's easier to check out.
Yeah.
I think you had a support network in place to allow you to do that. And I was like, thank God for that, right?
Yeah.
Your mother would come and take care
yeah. And I think
Ruby.
I think it's like really, really important to sort of emphasize what an incredible support network I've always had. You know, my so, you know, my parents live around, like they could be at Great Ormond Street in 10-20 minutes, you know, depending on how they got there. Steve's family are also near London, like they're kind of in more suburbs, but they would come, and sometimes, you know, one of our parents would even stay the night, so me and Steve could have like a date night where we'd both just fall asleep on the sofa. But
at least you were together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think and my mum would be there so many days of the week so that I could go and teach. And I think, you know, she understood. I mean, and also it was, for me, it's so important to, because I think one thing that made Ruby's life really rich was the variety of people she was around. And actually a lot of the doctors would comment on how she didn't really have stranger danger like a lot of kids do when there's, you know, because a lot of the time people are coming to prod.
They're different people.
Yeah. But I think in a hospital like that, especially, they're so gifted at like, they learn a lot of the soft skills as well. It's not just the medical stuff. Like they, you know, a lot of them understand, like, I don't know if you've heard of Makaton. It's the...
what is that?
It's almost like a sign language that you can use with kids, not necessarily kids with communication issues. It's good for all children. It helps them learn, like sing and sign is quite big and stuff. Yes. But it was really helpful for her. And they were, you know, she had this like incredibly gifted play worker called Jodie, who would just like really just like would organize these unbelievable sessions, and she'd make like this whole what's the word, like not like what's it like when you make like an arc for like a term, like a school term. And she did actually start school with a teacher, which was really sweet. And he was incredible, called Kai.
You spoke about him, I think.
Yeah. I mean, those people, because I think, you know, a lot of people be like, you and Steve are amazing parents, and that's really nice to hear. And I think we did give it a really good shot. But we were so we really like embraced the support. And I think because Ruby's needs were so extraordinary, that support is more readily there. It's recognized that that support is needed. But my personal belief is all children need that. And I think, especially in London, we probably don't have the village in the way that, whereas I really had that habit now. And I think that is part of why I was still able to teach.
So has the loss of Ruby changed you as a teacher?
I think it's too early to say. I think it's a little bit too early to say. To be honest with you, I think being her mum changed me as a teacher a lot already. I think it gave me an appreciation for vulnerability. I think it gave me a real appreciation for how much there's a spectrum in the room. Like you might not, that someone might come in and you don't know what's going on in their life, but also like there's a whole spectrum. You know, I think we have a lot more understanding of like neurodiversity now and all sorts of, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that I'm a lot more patient than I was. I'm way less strict. I'm not as strict about alignments. I think that, I've never been super hot on big poses anyway. I kind of I always tell people, and, you know, when teachers come to my class, they want to do whatever they want to do, great, like that's great. But I don't emphasize the postures in that way. I'd rather give people and what was quite nice as well, as a student said the other day, she was like, you really mean it when you say take child's pose. And I was like, yeah, I do. It's your time, you know.
Yeah. So are we saying that you have you feel now a responsibility to hold people a little bit differently and you're more aware?
Yeah, I think whereas I think before I would, because I would be someone who would like sometimes maybe be a little irritated if someone seemed not to be listening to me. And that is still really annoying, don't get me wrong. But also, I think
There's the why.
Yeah. And it may not be because they're being disrespectful. Yeah. I mean, it could be, but then as long as someone's not injuring themselves or another, I feel like it's kind of their space. And actually, if I'm creating a sort of, I don't like the word safe space, a dedicated space is my favorite, preferred saying. But if I'm creating that container as much as I can, then better things unfold for the students. And I would say now I mostly get quite a familiar crowd in terms of what they want. And like occasionally there was a guy who came in not that long ago and he said, how fast is your class compared to, I think it was 4-beat or one of the other rockets? And I was like, it's half the pace. Well, not 4-beat, obviously that's nice and
measured.
Yeah, but yeah, it's funny, but I think people, you know, like vinyasa is so broad, so you have to come to, like, I always say to people, go to a few classes, see which teacher you resonate with, because it's not like something like 4-beat where even though all of the teachers will interpret it with their own flair, it is a method, as same with Ashtanga, Mysore.
So what does then strength and resilience mean to you now?
I think people I've shown myself I'm much stronger than I think in every sense. So for me personally, I'm not afraid of my strength now, and I'm not. I listen. I really listen to my own body now, and that can actually sometimes be that I can do more than. So in the same way that some people one could overdo it, you can also. So I have quite a high tolerance now for intensity, just because of everything I've been through, and that means that sometimes it's good for me to really. What's the word? Not like maybe embrace that. So I think sometimes people can give you messaging about like, oh, you should slow down, not slow down, but you should do a bit less. And if you don't feel that that's true for you, then I don't think you have to. So that's that's contrary to maybe what a lot of people say about be careful of burnout. And so maybe that's the controversial take, but that's just what I found. I think and people have come to me and they're like, you're so strong, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like,
you must hear that all the time.
I do. And that's
okay. I mean, people they actually mean that.
They mean it. And as I said, I take everything as positive, because I know that people always mean, and that's not a negative thing, but I always want to say, I'm like, if you were in my position, you would probably do the same. And I even if I stood outside of myself for the last 2 years, I'd probably say like, oh, I would never be able to handle that. But you can. That's what strength and resilience mean to me.
You're given what I think. I think you're given exactly what you can handle.
Yeah.
You were given a lot.
Yeah, I was given a lot.
Has anything become less important to you?
Loads. Stuff. We went away and had to take, and I'm not like, this is not bad at all. We had to take an alternative route home because of what's going on in the Middle East. And we had to take like quite a convoluted journey. And in that we lost a bag, which is TBC if it'll come back. It's been about 3 weeks, so you never know. Maybe not. And it's annoying, don't get me wrong. And like the airline sent a bag, but it was someone else's. But it's one of those ones where like that would have really pissed me off. And I'd be like, but my stuff. And then I'm like, it's just stuff. Even if there was something really expensive in there, I can still see that is just stuff. Like I will never get attached to things in the same way. I think that's what's changed. I'd say as well, what else? Less important. I think a lot became less important also when I became a mum in general. And I feel like with my other mum friends, who became a mum at a similar time to me, said the same. Like things that used to really bother them are just unimportant. My relationship with my body's changed a lot. I want to make it strong just because, I don't want it. I mean, it's nice if it looks a certain way and like you can wear certain clothes, sure, but it's not about being skinny. I find that I feel like if you're, as I hope I have been, kind of like honest in your challenges, which I have, because there are elements of grief. There were elements of grief always at play throughout Ruby's life because it was hard seeing your kid go through that. And I tried to be quite honest and open about it. And because of that, I feel like the really quality friends kind of stick around. So I think, and I'm very lucky there, but I think, it's any kind of sort of more, I don't want to say shallow friendships because that sounds maybe ungrateful, but like kind of more acquaintances, that becomes less important to me.
Yeah. So has anything become more important? I suppose that's the next question.
Yeah, I think quality over quantity. I think time. I have truly learnt the meaning of one day at a time. I learnt it with Ruby around and I know it now. Because actually I think the best thing you can ask someone who's grieving is, because some people say, how are you? That's a silly question. But actually I think the best thing you can ask is, how are you today?
Yeah.
Just because of how much it changes day to day.
Yeah.
And I'd say, what is important to me is really keeping it in the day as much as you can, because I think there is so much richness in the present moment, even when things are very, very challenging. And I think to try and skip over the difficult things means you're going to miss something very precious as well. So I think, what's important to me is really valuing the present day.
You are going to be teaching a workshop for Mission on May 15th.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because it's going to be about raising awareness and funds for the CDG UK charity. Tell us what people can expect.
Oh, yeah. So May 15th is the Friday, and the following day, May 16th, every year is CDG Awareness Day. and yeah, it's we have lots of dedicated days now. It's to sort of shine a light on this set of rare diseases, and kind of how, not just kind of the sort of scientific side of it, but highlighting the families and how that affects the whole family and the community. Everyone wears green. That's the color.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't choose.
That.
Yeah, I didn't choose it, but green. I have. Yeah, I'll be making more T-shirts. I did. I think I made some the first year of when she was really, really little, but I'll make more. And yeah, raising funds, because actually, I mean, somewhat, it is on a level, I guess you could say it's bittersweet. A lot of the sort of therapies, particularly one, is very, very close to passing certain safety, trials, I guess, to be more widely available, that would have benefited her. But, timing just wasn't on our side in that way. So, and those things need funding. So we try, and as a charity, CDG UK, and then there are other CDG charities. There's CDG Care in the US, which is kind of global as well, and then you've got the CDGs for each of the countries. Raise a lot of money, because these, especially when you get into kind of setting up trials and stuff, it costs in like the tens of millions. It's extraordinarily expensive. And so I'll be holding a workshop. I will be sharing, my part will be kind of a little bit of a longer vinyasa flow practice than if you come to my classes at Mission. It's going to be a little bit more drawn out. And it'll be just a chance to go deeper with some of the, I'll share some of the philosophy. I'm going to talk about Ruby a lot, because how can I not? And I think I'm going to try and bring, so what I've learned from my training with Jyoti, even though that serves a different community than we might get at Mission typically, I'm going to try and share some of what has been meaningful to me from that to these students. And then Sonal Thakrar, who is a amazing, she has these like alchemy bowls, and she plays them and sends everyone into a state of absolute bliss. We paired up maybe 2 years ago now for the first one after Ruby was diagnosed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's coming back to do that.
So students can sign up for it through the Mission workshop, but you don't have to go to the workshop. You can still donate.
You can.
We've set up a Just Giving page.
Exactly. So you can sign up, and it's free to sign up, and then there's the donation link. Yeah. So yeah, please do come along. It'll be really, really nice to hold that space for everyone.
Thank you, Elle, for talking to us so candidly and openly. I admire you, and I know so many in the Mission community love you a lot, and Steve, and just want to be there for you, for him, and for Ruby, and for your future.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.